Bahalotcha. Okay, so Parashat Nosai, after the Torah goes just very briefly through the particular avoda of the different sons of Levi, what their avoda was, then it talks about the fact that that every person is obligated to give the Kohen his truma. Pasuk says, "V'chal truma l'chal kotzer b'nei Yisrael asher yivel l'kohen lo yiyah." All right. So the Torah obligates every person to give the Kayin his truma. Right after that, the Torah talks about Dabar Yisrael, Matlahem ish kisista ishtoi, umala boy mal. Torah then goes into the parasha of the Saita. We know about the unfaithful spouse, right? So Rashi, is bothered by the, well, let's go further. And right after the Saita, the Parsha talks about Nazir. And after Nazir, it talks about the blessings of the priests. So these are four separate mitzvahs, but obviously there must be some sort of connection. And Rashi does point us to some point to connection. He says, well, the first thing he says is that if a person doesn't give truma to the Kohen, he'll end up with a wife that's a sota. That sounds rather harsh, right? What does that really mean? It sounds extremely harsh. What does that mean? And then the next one, Rashi tells us, Haroa sota b'gegula yazas v'nayayin. Somebody sees a sota in her demise. Somebody sees that happen. The Torah recommends for a period of time that they should perhaps abstain from overindulging themselves, like this woman had done. After that, you have the birchas kahana. Okay, so just as an aside, the one that most people think makes sense, which is that if you see a woman committing adultery, so the Torah suggests that maybe you should pull back yourself so you don't get tempted and overindulge yourself and practice being a Nazir. It's hard to understand that because I would understand the other way around. If you see somebody commit a crime and get away with the crime, that might be tempting. If you see someone commit a crime and not get away with it, that's not tempting. If I see a guy walk into a bank every single day, and for some reason I leave the vault open, and every day this guy walks out with 2 gold bars, and the guards smile at him, and that's it. You see, every day goes on for 5 days. I'm going to try the same thing, right? You got to be nuts not to try it, right? But if you see the guy walk and try the vault, and every time they walk in, they slap the handcuffs on him, you're not trying it. It doesn't make sense, right? So haraya saita bikil kula, haraya saita bikil kula. If you see a saita in her demise, yazas maniyai means she's caught. She brought shame and disgrace on the family. She's going to be punished. Why the heck do you have to practice pulling away? Why would I be tempted by that? Doesn't make sense. If she got away with it, I understand the temptation. Maybe she's not getting away with it. But here the Torah is teaching us something that I hopefully we all intuitively know. But sometimes people struggle with it on a practical level. I remember when I grew up, so somebody might recommend this, realize as well. So we had actually one television in our house. It was my parents' bedroom. It was a black and white TV actually, and later on we got color obviously, but it was black and white TV. And I remember my mother used to hide the plug during the week, so she didn't want us watching. We could watch Sunday night and Matzah Shabbos. During the week the plug was hidden. She didn't know that. Me and my brother knew exactly where she had the plug. Every day when she left to work, we took the plug, plugged it back in, had a good day, and that was it. I would put the plug back, fine, not a problem. All right? That was not a problem. Huh?
She never knew?
Hence, never knew. Hence, I'm an expert in Get Smart, Mr. Ed, all those shows I watched religiously every single day. My mother had no clue why I knew every single episode by heart. Anyway.
So you grew up religious.
I grew up, there you go. So, but here's the thing. In those days, I remember there was a great debate whether the children should be exposed to violence on TV. And again, violence then, remember, what was violence then? A guy did with his fist, right?
No real blood.
No real blows. The guy faked the thing and fell to the floor. Right? Today, my students tell me violence is, when the guy's eyeballs are popping out, blood is oozing from every single pore, and if it's not, then they want their money back. It doesn't do anything for it, right? It's terrible. But those days they asked, is it healthy for our kids to be exposed to violence? So actually the prevailing wisdom of psychologists then was the following. That it depends. If the good guy's killing the bad guy, then it's okay. Because the message is that good is triumphing over evil. That's okay. Interesting, but incredibly stupid. Yeah. And that's what the Torah is telling us over here. Because the bottom line is you could watch from today to tomorrow, the good guy killing the bad guy, but if you're exposed to violence, that is going to have an impact on your sensitivity. By the way, there's something called intellectual truth and something I'd call emotional truths. And Berdessa talks about this a lot. And you're quite familiar with this. The famous fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't partake of the first two plagues because he was hidden by the Nile, right? And also he buried the Egyptian in the sand. So right now, certainly the Nile and the sand had no intention of saving him, but there's an emotional truth that has nothing to do with intellectual truth. The emotional truth is that this sand benefited me. So there's something called an emotional truth that impacts a person, whether intellectually it makes sense or not. When you go to the movies, and I always ask them, why are you bawling your heads off? It's fake. It doesn't make a difference. It's an emotional truth. It's connecting to that emotional truth. And in the same way, exposure to violence, your emotions are desensitizing to violence. And so that, when you read the paper about this terrible shooting here, you just flip the page. What's next? Because it's become so regular. Haraya Saita Bikil Kula. The Torah was up on that and said, even if you see a Saita Bikil Kula, even if you witness Saita and she got caught, but the exposure to adultery on some level is going to impact you. Just the exposure itself has to in some way lessen the sharpness of your moral, boundaries. It's going to erode it a little bit. It has to. And that's really what the Torah told us thousands of years ago, that exposure that involves emotional truths that impact whether or not, intellectually. So you can go, and that's not about adultery. You work in a particular company where everybody is lewd and they speak coarse language, and you say something, I know it's wrong. You might know it's intellectually wrong, but again, the exposure has to, on some level, take away from your outrage. And unless you do something to compensate in a proactive way, it will cause some sort of erosion, so to speak. And so that emotional truth is the exposure that your sensitivities, a person is fueled by their sensitivities. If you deaden their sensitivities, they don't have the energy to perform. And so you don't want to erode those sensitivities. And the sensitivity to, whether it's morality, whatever sensitivity is towards, you don't want to deaden those, because the sensitivities are really provide the fuel and the energy to any action you want to do. So that emotional truth has to be acknowledged. The Torah is saying, yes, Harai Kula is going to impact you emotionally. It's going to, when I say emotionally, it means it's going to involve your five senses. Your five senses take in things that, that impact you, whether or not your intellect is on board with that or not. And so, that piece has to be reconciled. Okay, that's a good, very important lesson. But I'd like to share with you a broader scope about these four particular mitzvahs and why they're connected. So this is something that we've talked about, you've heard, I'm sure, many, many places, the basic concept, and then we're going to see how it develops. Everyone's composed of a guf and a neshama. Okay? If I had to ask you what the defining behavior, not character, defining behavior of a guf is, and the defining behavior of a neshama is. So don't tell me physical and spiritual, because that's character. What's the defining behavior?
Giving and taking.
Giving and taking, right? Exactly. The body just takes. Body has no interest in giving whatsoever. There's not a shred of your body that gives, and the neshama is a giver. Okay, excellent. All right. And it makes sense. Like any muscle, you exercise it, it gets stronger. You don't exercise it falls into disrepair or becomes atrophies, right? Every muscle works that way. Okay. So it makes sense that if a person wants to grow their soul, they have to exercise the giving component. And in the Torah, you have all these exercises that allow you to promote and develop your giving, which allows you to get past yourself, which is the first step towards holiness, is getting beyond yourself, not being absorbed with yourself. Okay. So now we're going to see how every single thing in the Torah is geared towards this dynamic, and let's see how these four mitzvahs kind of fit that entire scheme. It says that if you don't give to the Kohen, you'll end up with a wife of Sota. Sounds like a very harsh punishment. It's not a punishment, but it's a consequence. What it means like this. One of the main reasons why God created a marriage is God wanted us to develop. And develop means to grow spiritually, and growing spiritually we just defined as being the capacity of a giver. In a relationship, you're always in a capacity of giving. In fact, at a bris, we say, Kishem shenechlas bris, ken yikones l'torah, l'chuppah, u'l'masim tovim. We say we wish this child, just like he enters the chuppah, he should enter the Torah, the chuppah, the ma'asim tovim. And the most universal question is, the order seems to be wrong. Why is it Torah, chuppah, and ma'asim tovim? You could have ma'asim tovim and then chuppah, right? But why we say chuppah and then ma'asim tovim? You can have good deeds before you marry. The answer is certainly you can. But the point is that after chuppah, everything you do is ma'asim tovim, or potentially could be. I always give the example, if I go shopping to buy cereal, doesn't seem like a very holy act. That's not true. When I'm reaching for the cereal, what I'm thinking in my head is, okay, what does my wife like? So you automatically, even the most mundane activity in a marriage, you're thinking for two, which is an act of giving, and that's not about yourself. So chuppah and then ma'asim tovim, to the extent that of course you're going to have ma'asim tov first, but what it's saying is that chuppah, everything becomes ma'asim tovim after this. The whole function of chuppah. Okay, so the whole point of marriage is to develop that giving piece, so that you could develop yourself and grow, become a spiritual individual. If you don't give to the Kohen, which means you're not capable of being a giver, then your marriage is going to suffer. Doesn't mean your wife's going to turn to sota overnight, but it means that dynamic of marriage, which so much depends on the ability to give, is not going to happen. Now, a person might say, one second, Rabbi, I could be a giving person in my marriage, I'm just not giving to the Kohen. We think we can compartmentalize. We're very guilty. We think we compartmentalize. I'm not going to be a giver when it comes to charity, but I'll be a giver in my house. It doesn't work that way. It's the same midah, the same character trait. And to the extent that, again, that if you have opportunities to give charity and you don't give charity, you're diminishing your sensitivity to be a giver, so that it'll impact in a relationship too. So you can't compartmentalize and say, I'm not going to be a giver when it comes to the Kohen, I'm not going to be a giver when it comes to charity, but I'll still be a giving family member. It doesn't work that way, because it's the same midah. And to the extent that you damage it, right? To the extent that you damage the giving component by not giving to the Kohen, will also impact in your marriage. Okay, so if you don't give to the Kohen, you'll end up with a wife asota, means that you'll end up in a relationship that's not so healthy. Okay,
so about the Kohen himself.
What's that? So okay, he has the opportunity. He has the opportunity to give also. Obviously, first the Kohen spends all day giving. But hold on a second. So what does a person like that do? A person who is not giving to the Kohen, what should he do? So the Torah says the following: if a person who's self-absorbed and he's always on the take, first of all, they're never aware that they're takers. People that are takers, their sense of entitlement doesn't even allow them to think that I'm taking. You know what the most appreciative people are when you give them something? Givers. Givers. Because they are so aware. I'm taking that because they're so into the mode of giving that when they take, they're aware. But a person who's always on the take doesn't realize that.
They don't want it.
What?
Or typically
right. They don't want it, certainly. They're uncomfortable with it on every level, but they're certainly aware of it, right? So a person who's not a giver, the Torah says, what you got to do. You got to step out of your own life of self-indulgence. No fussing with here, no drinking wine. That's what Nuz essentially is. I'm not about me for the next month. So what you need to do is resensitize yourself by stepping out of the world of fussing with yourself and not caring about yourself. So you're trying to restore that giving sensitivity that you've lost. And the way to do that is by going to the other extreme. Like my Rambam always says, if you want to get back to the middle, the balance, you may have to go to one extreme first, right, to get to the middle, right? The famous classic example he gives of a bush or a tree that's bent in one direction. You have to bend in the other direction for a while, hold it there for a while, and then it'll make its way towards the middle. So the Nazir is kind of an extreme position, and therefore it's not seen to be a permanent position. Maybe we'll get there. And you go to that extreme position for a period of time, 30 days minimum, could be longer, and that you're stepping out of a taking capacity. That's it. And then you become more sensitive to giving. Once you do that, once you've restored your equilibrium, then you're ready for the blessings of the Kohen. Why? Because when you get blessed of the Kohen, you're on the receiving end of the blessing. You're taking, right? Is that bad? Not necessarily. We know sometimes you need to take so you become a better giver, right? So after you go through this fundamental exercise of giving to the Kohen, if you don't, you'll end up in a bad relationship. If you want to restore the relationship, take a step back. Once you get back to that point, now you're ready to receive the blessings of the Kohen, because we're sure that you'll share them with others as well. Because then the taking won't just be for yourself. That taking will be with an eye towards giving. So these four mitzvahs, side by side by side by side, are really one long exercise and really kind of encapsulates really the whole dynamic of giving and taking. If you don't give, relationship's going to rot. And the truth of the matter is, it's all about that relationship because that's how we develop and grow. Take a step back if that's the case. Resensitize yourself by really going to the other extreme for a while. And then once you get there, now you're ready to take and receive the blessing as well. Okay, that's I think a really nice gradation. Okay, what I want to talk about is a different series, and that's in this is Parsha. All right, in Parsha.
Before you go there, Rabbi, when David was in 4th grade, Rabbi Fleischman asked him what these mitzvot had in common. And ever since then, that was one of the first experiences I had in trying to put together the sequential, the relationships sequentially in the midbar. I've read many analyses and discussions. This one is very special.
Thank you.
You added to what I've learned from all the other.
Okay, terrific. Terrific.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for saying that. Okay, the next thing. I guess one more thing in Nassau, just very quickly, something I've mentioned, but I want to just repeat this. Everyone knows the famous question, the end of Nassau, where the Nasiim bring the exact same carbon, and it's repeated every single time. I think it's total 72 psukim. Ramban asked the question, what's the point? If it's repetition, just say ditto, or whatever the case is, right? Why repeat it exact times? And so the Ramban tells us, we know, I'm just going to say it just a little bit different, the same idea, and that is that, everyone comes to shul. We all have the exact same siddur. Are we all praying the same way? Absolutely not. It's sometimes a little frustrating because we think that, what am I doing? I'm just a clone doing the same as everybody else. I'm robotic. It's not true. Your tefillah is totally different than the person next to you. Your kavanah is different, your emotion is different, your intellect is different, your mood is different, you name it. In every which way. So the same way that we understand that we preach that with the siddur, we have to appreciate the Nasiim. Each one brought a carbon. It looked the same on the outside, like the text of the siddur looks exactly the same, but no two prayers are alike. And the Nasiim the same way. And that doesn't just apply to each one of us individually, but applies to us from day to day as well. There's a woman comes home from work one day and she sees her husband, sitting at the kitchen table, like staring into space. So she says to him, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Nothing." She says, "Well, that's what you did yesterday." He goes, "Yeah, I'm not done yet." Right? Right? The truth of the matter is, it's really hard to know when you finish doing nothing, right? When you finish, right? And in a sense, sometimes, in a sad way, we go from day to day, and we won't say it's like a repetition of the day before, and you don't even know where one day ended, where one day began, and it's a mistake. I'll tell you this: my brother-in-law, not the one who was a rebel, just a great. He's not a plain person. He's a great person. He's all right. He's a very special person. He wants to tell me a story that he mentioned in passing. I thought it was such a brilliant story. He was in New Hampshire, in Bethlehem, I think it's called. It was a city called Bethlehem in New Hampshire, and in his heyday, I don't think anymore. It was like a lot of Hasidim. The Satmar would go there for the summertime. It was like there was minyanim galore over the summertime. In fact, even now, actually, it's I think it's Vermont now they do it. But New Hampshire was a big place where they congregated in the summertime. People rented houses there, had a good time. All right. Anyway, so it happens to be he was staying in this hotel that everybody stayed at, and in the morning he got up to daven, and he sees Rev Kreisworth. Rev Kreisworth was the chief rabbi of Antwerp in Belgium, and he's also a dean of yeshiva in Israel, who I actually was my dean for many years in Israel as well. Very special, brilliant person, literally with a photographic memory. When he would speak, he would go like this. I remember he has two fists like this speaking, and you could see him just reading the lines in the visible, like he just was reading everything. Just have incredible memory. Anyway, my brother meets him. He's like honored. He says, "My name is so and so. Let's say you're welcome. And he says, "Oh, Professor, it's very nice to meet you." Give him a little bracha. Wonderful. Okay. Next day he gets up. And Rav Kreis was still there. He was surprised. The second day, he was lucky. Went over again. He said, "By the way, Shalom Aleichem, I'm the same guy. I introduced you yesterday." He goes, "I hope you're not the same guy that you introduced to me yesterday." Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Right? The same way, what he's saying is that your tefillah today should be slightly different than yesterday. And I don't just mean better, but different. Meaning, what I'm saying is sometimes we feel like I did it, sometimes we just get into this, we fall into this rut. Because I did this yesterday, the day before, and so therefore it doesn't have any meaning. You're making a mistake. It's not because you need to have more translations today than yesterday. But understand that every day's tefillah is different because every day you're in a different place. And therefore the tefillah that you're saying is a different tefillah. As you should get excited about it. Because I'm saying you're a different person from day to day. It shouldn't be that you simply spill in from one day to the next. You should be different. And it doesn't have to be something huge. It could be the slightest subtle difference, but we are different every single day. I think I once quoted to you. It says if you miss out saying the Kriya Shema once, it's like you never ever said Shema in your entire life. That's a bit unfair, right? Right?
Time never happened.
Right? What it means doesn't mean that you never said Shema. It means that Shema you'll never say again. Because that Shema that you're going to say on Thursday evening about Ma'ariv is a different Shema that you can say Friday night. Thursday night you're in a different kind of mood. Friday night, it's different. You're not going to capture that Shema the same way. So that's really what's going on. We have to really appreciate that we're not the same the day before. And I'm just saying that not because I'm saying it in a preventive way that we step into the sitter on Ma'ariv and go, okay, we don't even think about it, but subconsciously, been there, done that. And so you don't really appreciate what you're doing. You're a different person today. Your feeling is going to be a little bit different. If you just realize that, you'll have more excitement just being aware of the fact that you're not the same person. Every day we're slightly different. That's what the lesson for the Nesiim. Okay. Let's go to Parashat Bahalotcha. Okay. Another corny joke. We need a corny joke. All right. So, two priests were in a monastery, and they took a vow of silence. A vow of silence. But they made up that every person is entitled, once every 10 years, to say a sentence. Okay? So after 10 years, the priest says, this food stinks. Right? 10 years later, gets a chance to speak again. He says, these beds are so hard. You know? 10 years later, he says, you know what? This place is no good. I'm out of here. And all the priests look at him and say, well, it's about time. Since you got here, all you did is complain. and the truth of the matter is, that really is a great step into when we say all you've done is complain. Now, it's a kind of funny joke because he's only said that once, every 10 years. On the other hand, he's only spoken once every 10 years, and everything he had to say was a complaint. So, as much as it's kind of funny, but in a way it makes sense, and I want to talk about that. So, is this guy a complainer? I mean, he's only complained 3 times in 30 years, right? On the other hand, every time he got a chance to speak, he's complaining, right? So which one is it? So it sounds like I'm trying to dissect the joke, and we're trying to dissect the piece of Torah right here. It goes like this. Torah talks about the Jews when they left Har Sinai. They left Har Sinai, we know they left Har Sinai like a child runs out of school. On the last day of school, the children are zooming out of the school, right? They're flying out of school. Chazal really, I always think they're right, 100%. This time I think they got it wrong. They should have had that better expression. Teachers run out of school the last day of school. Forget the students. The teachers are running over the students to get out of school. Okay, but we know the expression is that students run out of school. So the Jews were in the school called Sinai. They went to the school called Sinai. And as soon as the Aseret was over, the show, boom, we're out of here. This is too much. And they run out of it. They hightail out of Sinai. Okay. Shortly afterwards, they start complaining again. Complaining what this time? That they're moving too fast. They have too many flocks. They got to slow down. This is too much. Okay. And then we find they complain about the famous, where's the beef? Right? We're tired of this month. We want real food. Give us beef. Okay. So, the Torah does something very unusual, as you all know, that the Torah inserts a parsha of Vahi ben Sa'aron, right? In between these 3 stories, it actually takes 2 nuns, inverts them upside down, right? Kind of using like brackets, if you will, and it inserts a parsha, Vahi ben Sa'aron, right? When you open the ark on Shabbat, we say Vahi ben Sa'aron, Vayom Moshe, Kumash Avisavecha, right? We say that. So that parsha doesn't really belong here, but the Torah throws it in and inserts it between these 3 episodes. Why? Because we know, according to the Torah, when you do something 3 times, that creates a pattern. Either creates a pattern or suggests an existing pattern. 2 ways to look at it, and both are true. Either establish a new pattern, you do something 3 times, you're creating a new habit for yourself, or the fact you did it 3 times is an indicator that you have that particular character trait. But either way, it suggests or conveys a pattern. So we have a problem here. We have 3 complaints, right? They want to get out of Sinai, let's get out of here. Then they complain about, right, that desert being too tough, and then they complain about the beef. So the Torah doesn't want to establish a pattern by the Jewish people of behavior, bad behavior and complaining. So the Torah inserts a parsha in between to say, Now you don't have a behavior of 3. Now it sounds a little bit artificial here, right? If they in fact complain 3 times in a row, how, because he's sticking a parsha, does that undo the complaint 3 times in a row? Right? It seems a little bit, contrived, right? What does that mean? That's question number 1. And question number 2 is, if we have 3 stories, right? Sinai complaining about the speed, the slow, there's 2 stakes that need to go slower, too tough, and the beef. If you want to break up the pattern, you have 2 choices. You can either put it between what? 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, right? The Torah specifically puts it between 1 and 2. Nothing's arbitrary, nothing's random. We got to know why the Torah splits up 1 and 2. And then, additionally, why does the Torah use the letter Nun of all letters to flip them upside down? All right? You could say it looks like a bracket, but there's got to be more than that, obviously. All right. So, we're all guilty on some level in relationships, whether it's with our spouse, certainly there, but even friends. When you get upset, you always do this. What do? We create patterns. Now, this person may have been late 3 years ago once, and late 1 year ago, and then, oh, you're always late. Right? We're very quick to establish patterns when some may not really exist. But we connect the dots, except when it comes to ourselves, by the way. Then we never create patterns. Every time we have an excuse. You don't understand. That only happened because of this. That's not who I really am. Right? But it's certainly with other people too. That when we accuse people by saying, you always do, and we connect the dots and suggest patterns when none may exist, and each time might have been really a fluke. So the Torah is trying to tell us, don't look for patterns. Don't assume automatically patterns. So it's not the Torah. The Torah is breaking up the patterns because the Torah is saying, who says it is a pattern? Who says it's a pattern? Just because it happened 3 times doesn't always convey a pattern. Don't be quick to condemn and say, that you see a pattern over here. It's a really important lesson that we often tend to overlook, and we connect the dots. We accuse people of doing things, and you're always this kind of person. That's not the case. Okay. So that's really something we have to be cognizant of, that we don't want to create these patterns. Fine. But why did the Torah specifically do that between 1 and 2? Because it's not that the Jews, on 3 separate occasions, or not separate occasions, how are we going to say it, did complain. That itself is not great. But the first 2 together, they're explosive in an accusation. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't hightail out of Sinai, fly out of there, and then complain, we're going too fast in the desert. 1 second. What, are you able to travel fast or not? In other words, our inconsistency is the greatest pointing finger at ourselves. It's not sometimes we do things wrong, which sometimes we do things that are wrong, and we don't know better. But when we're inconsistent in our behaviors, that's what we're going to be held much more accountable for. When a person says, Rabbi, I'd love to study with you, I just don't have the time. Really? How can we have the time for every mishigas in the world? Right? And if you go through a week, let's see how much time you've wasted doing absolutely nothing. Did I tell you this? My students told me that on YouTube, it's incredible. On YouTube, there's a guy that counts from 1 to 100,000. That's it. That's the entire YouTube. 1, 2, 3, and there's over 1 million hits. Right? People waste time like it's going out of style.
That's true.
Right? So that inconsistency, you can't say, I don't have the time to do when you have to plan, right? Or I don't have the strength, but I have the strength for that. Or I don't have so the 2 together are extremely damaging. They can't run out of Sinai and then complain, we can't run quickly in the desert. It's one or the other. So those 2 together need to be broken up, because those 2 together are much more accusatory. Well, if the letter Nun, it's brought down in different places, really is associated with Ne'emun. Ne'emun means to be, anybody know? Faithful, trustworthy, consistent. That's what trustworthy is, consistent. So if the Nun means consistent, what does the upside down Nun mean? Inconsistent. That's why the Torah specifically brackets Parashat Bahalotcha with the upside down Nun. Because the Torah is trying to point out there's an inconsistency here that I have to, I don't want to put together. I don't want to see this together, so to speak. Because those two together are so much damaging. And Hashem doesn't want to look that way. Hashem doesn't want to see that inconsistency. So he specifically breaks up the pattern between 1 and 2. Because those two together are the most damaging in that they convey an inconsistency which is symbolized by the upside down look. All right. So that's a really important piece that we have to acknowledge in our lives, that we often see patterns, and we'll do that very often. You always do this, you always do that, is usually when a person himself is not in a great mood, and so they will they'll dump on somebody else. It works both ways. And I should point this out, that when somebody dumps on you, obviously that's not right for them to do so. On the other hand, you have to realize that often they're not really going after you. You just become the unfortunate person in the wrong place at the wrong time that they're dumping on, they're letting go on.
Who's Kicking My Dog?
What?
Have you read the book Who's Kicking My Dog?
Yeah.
Great book. But the idea is that people tend to take out their frustrations on somebody else, especially someone lower than them.
Yeah, but in general, and that's although it's certainly it's something that's not appropriate, but on the receiving end, if you realize that it's not you, you're not going to personalize it, so it won't escalate. And that's the real key, is not to personalize, because 9 times out of 10, it's not you. When people are in a bad mood, I always quote, most of my wisdom comes from either Torah or comic strips, one of the two, I'm sorry, right? So one of my favorite is Calvin Hobbes, and Calvin says, there's nothing as good for a bad mood as getting somebody else in a bad mood too, right? Right? That's, misery loves company, so to speak. So often we'll do that, and we have to recognize that's where people are coming from, and that's the case. The other point, I do want to point out one more thing, that is that the Nazir, there are two kinds of beauty in the world. Beauty really represents symmetry. That's what beauty is. I think they did a study, and they were able to, what a beautiful face look like, and they said it's the symmetry of the face, where the eyes are exactly proportioned properly, and the chin, right? There's a symmetry that really creates a beauty, and that's real beauty. We have all sorts of false beauties, Shekar Chen Ve'Bal Yofi, and the Nazir really is that person that's really stepping away from the false beauty to recognize more of an inner harmony. And if you think about it, almost everything we do in life is trying to bring back that beauty or harmony to an individual or to the world. Everything. A lawyer really is trying to bring harmony between two litigating sides, to come up with some sort of balanced position between both of them. A teacher is really trying to bring harmony between these rotten, spoiled kids and the world they're going to have to enter and learn how to deal with, right? You're trying to create that harmony there as well. If you're on a team playing sports, there's a certain teamwork that involves harmony. So almost everything we do is with an eye towards creating this deeper beauty, this inner beauty, this sense of harmony. And the Nazir is that person that's recognized that I'm not going to allow the world to define my beauty, but I'm going to take a step back and really find the inner harmony of myself. All right, that's really the lesson behind that as well. But when people don't have that inner harmony, that's when they get really agitated. In fact, that's when they get upset at people around them. Why is it that I don't know, if you're in a bad mood, you don't have an inner harmony, you come home and let's say you walk in the house and there's dining room chairs are around the table, you'll start tossing a couple around, right? Or if you're really in an agitated state and there's a clock on the wall going tick tock, it gets you crazy, right? Now really the tick tock rhythm should be a very soothing rhythm, and for some people it is. You know why? When you're in a rhythm, then the rhythm is fine. When you're at a rhythm, anything in rhythm drives you nuts. The chairs around the table that are nicely proportioned, they drive a person crazy when their inner rhythm is gone. That's what's really going on. It's a reaction to that it's a reminder of what you're not. And you don't want to acknowledge that. So you toss the chair, no more equilibrium. Right? I can't handle that tick-tock. But that tick-tock really is a rhythm. So we have to realize that when, sometimes you're in a good place and somebody really goes after you, it's because your inner rhythm is what really is agitating them because they don't have that. But again, like I said, we have to realize they're not really going after us. That's really an important sense over here. So again, the idea of sometimes, you always do X, Y, and Z is not always the case, and they're not always going after us either. And that's really the lesson of patterns. Any questions before I just...
You got 3 minutes.
Got 3 minutes? Okay.
Maybe 15.
All right. I guess a parting, a summer thought. Gemara talks about the fact that really when you build something, there's an issue called binyan. You now build. Also now do something called stira. You now break something on Shabbos either. You now knock down a building either. But in Torah, the only prohibition of knocking down a building is if you plan on building on that same space. Because then that knocking down is really a constructive act. You're preparing the way for it, right? Okay. Gemara asks the question. Gemara says, in two different places really, two different areas. Gemara says, really, when they constructed the Mishkan, so that's binyan. Taking down the Mishkan is stira. But the Gemara says, really, when you took down the Mishkan, you didn't build it in the same place.